Thank you so much, Woody. This is very awesome. I'm excited to be here and been looking forward to this. So I have put together a presentation that speaks to what we're doing at EarthViews Conservation Society, but also focuses directly on the work that we're doing in Puget Sound. So let me share my screen and we'll go through this presentation, just a few slides, and then what I'll do is I will do some demonstrations of some of the data that I've collected and how to utilize the tool that we create. Just a little bit more about me and this origin story of how I went from doing fishery science work to sitting on a kayak with a camera and paddling around Puget Sound and gathering 360 imagery data. I as a fisheries research scientist, I've been doing it for 20 years and was at a point where I was looking for something different. I didn't really know what it was, but I didn't see myself continuing another 15, 20 years at the same job to retire. And it just so happened that I was doing some work on a river where there was a kind of like a hobby aircraft airport for hobby airplanes, the little tiny model airplanes. And they're flying them around. And it clicked to me, this is around 2014, drones were just kind of getting started. And I thought the work that I'm doing, looking for salmon nests and doing research on habitat in rivers, could be enhanced by imagery from drones. And so I called up a friend of mine who was an ex-pilot, and I said, hey man, let's get this business started. We're going to use drones to map rivers. And he's like, that sounds great. Let's try this. Drones were just starting and it was cool. Well, drones don't fly well in rivers, especially in Northwest rivers where there's a lot of overhanging vegetation. So we crashed them into the water a bunch. The FAA was nowhere near saying that they were going to allow people to do this commercially. And so we just kind of pivoted a little bit and pulled back, testing some things and trying out some ideas. But a colleague of mine told me that the granular information was so much better than just the aerial information that you would get from aerial photography when we were only down at 30 feet above the water, that data was quantifiable and more valuable. And so I took that to heart. And one day I was in a meeting and some people were on Google Earth trying to assess a habitat restoration site on the Green River, and they couldn't get the good enough view that they wanted from Google Earth. But someone said, hey, if we go on this bridge, you can use Google Street View on the bridge and look downstream. And it was at that point, I'm like, wow, what if we use Google Street View in rivers? And so I went to some people and they said, hey, so you're going to be Google for rivers? Sure. Google, that's Google, right? That you can't do that. And I'm like, how hard can it really be? And so a friend said, show me you can do it and we'll find some funding for you. And so I got some other people together who were smarter than me, some engineers who they graduated from the University of Washington, and we just took a bunch of GoPro cameras and broke them open and wired them together and had them all pointing in the right direction, and made a trigger so they would go off every 5 seconds simultaneously, and did it. Our first trip was down the Chicago River, actually. And we made a pilot and got some funding and started this company called EarthViews. And so EarthViews went on from 2016 until 2020 or so. EarthViews still exists, but what happened was COVID hit and things, as everybody knows, kind of shut down, right? Any mapping, we were doing mapping contracts using this 360 imagery for federal, state, and local agencies, contracting with King County and National Park Service, really specific projects where they wanted detailed maps these kind of detailed street view, river view type maps of waterways they were interested in. Um, those contracts were hit or miss, but they were just keeping us above the water. But then when COVID hit, things really slowed down. And I was at a point where I'm like, hey, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm just going to get in my kayak and map places because they need it. Because we'd always had a conservation minded aspect to what we did. We made all the data that we collected available on an atlas for the public. And I said, well, let's, Puget Sound's in trouble. Let me just start mapping Puget Sound. So I did that, and some folks got a whole wind of it, and GeekWire wrote an article about it, and some other press started. And by the time I made it to Olympia, the Seattle Times was doing a insert in Northwest Magazine that featured the work I was doing. So it was huge. I mean, and it was all about conservation. It wasn't about because it's a contract from any number of municipalities or counties that wanted their shoreline mapped. That's not so interesting to people. But the fact that we're doing it for orcas or for marine mammals or nearshore organisms really resonated with folks. And so I thought, well, this is fantastic. Let's take this model and see if it resonates other places. And so I took off last March, not this March, but the March before, and started a trip around the Western US because I figured there's other places that have endangered waterways, and the Western US is definitely one of them, given the mega drought that's been going on there. And so I went to the Great Salt Lake, and I went to the Rio Grande in Taos, and then in Albuquerque, where it runs south of Albuquerque, where the river runs dry. I went to Lake Powell and Lake Tahoe, and I did pilot projects in all those places and got the same kind of response: press interest, stakeholder interest, huge for the conservation of things. So we ended up going back to the Great Salt Lake and mapping the entire near shore of the Great Salt Lake during all the interest that was going on there. In fact, one of our articles about what I was doing on the Great Salt Lake spurred the first New York Times article that came out about it. And then, we had press with CBS, PBS NewsHour, Inside Edition, just to name a few. Probably, yeah, it was really interesting. People really glom onto this new way to tell a story about what's going on. So with that, I talked to my co-founders at EarthViews, and I said, hey, this conservation angle really matters. So why not we split up? I'll divest from EarthViews and start EarthViews Conservation Society nonprofit. You guys can continue to be the data hosting, data processing, GIS company, and continue to do that. And we'll utilize you for the technical services that we need. But in terms of documenting waterways and going out and advocating for them, we're going to do this, with the guy in the kayak kind of thing. And that's where we're at today. So it's a long-winded story, but it kind of gives you some background as to why I'm here talking to you today. So we started EarthViews Conservation Society, and our goal is, to protect, our mission to protect and recover waterways using imagery and data. So this is, I like really simple messages, and I can't ever say enough, and you'll hear me say this throughout this presentation, that water is everything. Okay. There is no life on Earth without water. It's that simple. And so therefore, saving our waterways is critical. We're inseparable from them. As I was putting this image together, it's your kind of obligatory polluted water with a human, or something like that, image, but it really strikes a chord, and it pulls at the heartstrings. But what I was thinking about as I was looking at this kid was, we spend, from an educator standpoint of talking to educators, we spend from the time kids are in elementary school all the way through high school teaching math. Every quarter of every year there's a math class. but there's nothing even comparable, nothing even a fraction of that for water. Like you can sit down and next to someone on the bus in Seattle and ask them where their water comes from, and 8 out of 10 don't know. Right? I mean, we it's beyond taking it for granted. It's not even like we just expect it to be there. But the fact of the matter is, it's not always going to be there. In fact, in Washington State, we think about well, we have all this rain and snow all the time, and we're cool, right? It's all good. But if you look at the Skagit River, it dries up because of dams. Salmon go, the river goes dry, and salmon spawning reds get dewatered. That happens on dry years all the time. Even in the Cedar River, where the Seattle water comes from, or the Green River, it was only boy, it must be about 8 to 10 years ago now. We had a drought, a big time drought, just one season of snowpack that wasn't enough, and a dry spring and summer was causing the city of Tacoma to have to pump from their wells to fill the reservoir. Seattle was moving water over from the Skagit River. So yeah, water is fragile and a big deal. So our vision is to have healthy rivers, lakes, estuaries, and oceans for all life on Earth. And to achieve this, we protect and recover these essential waterways. So how do we go about this? We go about achieving our vision and mission through a couple programs: document and advocate. And as part of documentation, it all begins with data collection. So this picture is from the Great Salt Lake when I was out navigating the Great Salt Lake. But I utilize this picture mostly because it gives a good shot of one of our data collection platforms. And in this case, we're using kayaks so we can be in really shallow water and be close to the shoreline and be able to really capture the land-water interface, because that's where the action's happening. That's where you're getting a lot of the impacts to waterways in terms of point source and non-point source pollution. And that's where you're having hypereik zones disconnected. Hypereik zones are where fresh water can't get into the salt water or vice versa due to bank armoring. So we want to be, our goal is to document what's going on in the shoreline areas. It doesn't do us any good to be out in the middle of the water looking around 360 at just open space. We want to capture like what's going on with the habitat in the nearshore areas. So what we do is we have a camera. It's come a long way. It used to be as big as a bucket, and now it's just a simple little GoPro 360 Max off the shelf. And it goes on top of the kayak here, and it goes off every 10 seconds. It takes a 360 image every 10 seconds. It's geolocated with GPS, operated by a battery pack, so it can run all day. And then also we take water quality measurements. So we have a water quality instrument. We hang the data on off the side of the kayak or boat. And every 10 seconds, the water quality instrument measures 10 different water quality parameters: pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, salinity, total dissolved solids, temperature, other waterway measurements that are crucial to having healthy waterways. And so all that data is collected together every 10 seconds and mapped using a customized GIS tool. And so, what do we do with this data? Well, beyond its usefulness in terms of how stakeholders and scientists can use it to learn more about these areas that they don't often get to go to be honest, a lot of folks who work in protecting and restoring and working with our waterways are policy people, and they're making big decisions, but they don't often go there. But that aside, one of the first and foremost things that I think is important about this information is its history. You can look back in the digital libraries at the University of Washington or other universities or the Library of Congress and see these old USGS photos from the late 1800s, where these guys carried those box cameras out in the field and just took pictures. And those are so valuable. I used to use them as a researcher in fisheries to understand what habitat conditions look like in different watersheds I was working in over 100 years ago. So this imagery will be around. It's a comprehensive look, much more comprehensive than a few still shots from a box camera with our modern technology. It's a super comprehensive look. And it's going to be around 50, 100 years from now. So it's going to be incredibly valuable in that sense, but it's also valuable when we go back 2 years later or 5 years later. It can show you trends in the data and how things are changing. And then we can begin to use artificial intelligence, machine learning on the imagery to start picking out how things change over time. And we've begun working on doing that as well. So we create these immersive maps using this 360-degree imagery and waterway data to inform the public and guide these scientific and policy decisions. You know, it helps understand the waterway's current and future conditions. So these programs, this document and advocate, the advocate part of the program, I didn't talk about that much, but I mentioned it earlier. It has to do with really educating the public and informing the public through the press and social media and presentations like this, and other media presentations, documentaries, Esri story maps. We put all those types of things together. We just did an Esri story map with the National Geographic Okavango Wilderness Project that won the International Story Map Condition competition for Esri. So we're really keen on intersecting with as many people as possible in the general public about what we're doing. And they get excited about the fact that they can actually go to these places and navigate and have a kayak perspective moving around the waterway, as I'll show you later. So through advocate and through document, so we're reaching millions of people through advocation, and through document, you know, we're collecting hundreds of thousands of images and millions of geospatial waterway data points. That's making a difference. You know, we're helping protect 250 species and millions of birds that use the Great Salt Lake as a migratory resting ground. We're optimizing the restoration and protection of 2,500 miles of Puget Sound nearshore habitat that the endangered southern resident orcas and threatened Chinook depend on, as well as all other life in Puget Sound and the people who live in the area. And we, you know, working with Lake Tahoe, we've detected over 100 algal growth hotspots. Lake Tahoe is all about water clarity. Water clarity is being impacted by climate change, increased forest fires with runoff into the lake. So we find these hotspots, and it helps them hone in on localized water quality challenges. So those are just a few examples of how this data can be used in a quantifiable way. So why Puget Sound? Here's the obligatory orca pic. I I could go, but we could go on about why Puget Sound is important for, you know, as long as I could give this presentation probably. It's the second largest estuary in the United States. It's got the largest oyster harvests, shellfish harvest in the United States. It has two of the largest ports on the West Coast, billions of dollars of industry. It's an economic engine for the entire United States. You know, that's without looking at, that's, you know, looking at how it just helps us really, you know, but also another thing people don't talk about is we live in a temperate area because of Puget Sound, right? It's an air conditioner for the region. We'd look a lot like Eastern Washington without Puget Sound. So in that sense, when the temperatures are increasing and you're getting dead zones in Puget Sound and you're having serious issues with water quality, how those cycles and how that refrigerator, that important water body functions is super important, not only to just the flora and fauna that live in Puget Sound, but also to us. But for me personally, when I'm mapping the near shore, it's really about this land water interface that I've talked about before, and how everything, everything is dependent on it. So here's kind of the food web, and you know, we're concerned about Puget Sound for this reason, for the holistic aspect of it and the interconnectedness of it. Um, and we're hoping that and seeing results from the work that we're doing in terms of how these flora and fauna, how this food web is being preserved and protected and restored and recovered. So I wanted to go over some examples of what our shore view tool does in terms of the maps that we make. And a few of those examples I listed here, just looking at some stormwater outfalls and looking at how our water quality information works, and checking out where some of the bank armoring is a really big problem in Puget Sound, checking out where some of that is, looking at some of the marine mammals that I've seen during the mapping, um, looking at some habitat restoration sites and kelp forests, and just overall checking out Puget Sound's beauty. So I'm gonna clock out from this presentation and move over to some live web internets, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that this all works. It should. Um, so this is our real basic EarthViews Conservation Society website that I just put together. It's a work in progress, but it's a place you can go to learn more about what we're doing. Um, and when you go here, you can click to explore our documented waterways map, or go to some of our featured areas. And when you do that, you come up with this map. And this map shows all these blue lines. We haven't just mapped the Puget Sound near shore. We've mapped, the Elwha River, Snoqualmie, Stillaguamish, Quileute. This is just in the Northwest, but if you zoom out, you can see over the United States, we've mapped over 6,000 miles of waterways since about 2016, and including that partnership that I talked about with National Geographic and the Okavango Wilderness Project, where we helped these guys map their data from the headwaters of the Okavango into the Okavango Delta. So you can, access all these places, go to Georgia and check out rivers in Georgia if you want, or hop around and look at a lot of different types of ecosystems and waterways around the US. But today we're going to focus on Puget Sound, and hop to this area near Tacoma where I put in one day. And I'm just going to kind of give you an overview here of what it's like. This is me getting started for a day in the field to get ready to go out in. Like Street View, it's a 360 look around. And one of the reasons I started here to show this is because you can see here I am with my phone. I'm connecting the app on the phone to the camera, so I can start the camera, and this is the water quality meter right here on the boat. The data son's hanging off the side, and I'm getting ready to simultaneously start all the equipment and head out into the Puget Sound. And you can see these little waves. It was a bit windy that day, and it's fairly typical for a hot summer day. The wind comes out of the north, and you get this fetch across this big expansive bit of water. And what you try and do is you make your way as close to the shore as you can without getting tipped over by the waves. That's why I use these type of kayaks, these really open, seated, wide berth, long kayaks that you can stand up in practically. They're used for sport fishing a lot, because they're super stable. And I don't want to be out here worrying about whether I'm going to get tipped over or not. I want to focus on keeping my line straight and looking out for other objects in the water. And I'm also looking out for animals that I see and counting them and geolocating them. So it's busy out there, and getting tipped over is the last thing you want to worry about. So, one of the things we can do, as I showed before, is we can look around and use these different features that this map has. You can zoom in on different features. You can click down the areas one scene at a time, just like you would in Street View. Or you can go to tags. And so if we wanted to, like, say we wanted to see where some stormwater outfalls are, we can go to tags and show right here. It says there's a culvert here, and you can click on that scene number, and it'll take you to that culvert. And in that way, you can assess the condition of the culvert, add some information about it, and then you can map these culverts. So certainly, I know that the municipalities and the people who are doing shoreline management have maps that they've made of all the culverts that's in their districts, right? But they're flat maps that have points on them. And unless you go out in the field and take a picture of it and add it to the data set, you don't have a lot of current information about what these are like. And so here you're able to have the contextual feel for, what these culverts are like. You can, see exactly where they are on the map, um, and get the feel for what it looks like. Also, as I was saying before, we take water quality data. So excuse me while I keep moving my zoom bar around, kind of gets in the way. I'm trying to hold, there we go. All good. Everything's out of the way now. So for each scene, as I said before, every 10 seconds, the water quality meter goes off. So for each scene, we take different water quality parameters. And so here's a list, a metadata table, if you will, of the water quality information at this site at this time, right? So right here, the pH was 7.45, the salinity was 19 parts per million, the temperature was 15. So that's one way to look at water quality information in certain areas. Another way is to chart it. And so what you can do is select a parameter. If you say you want to look at pH, and whoops, let's try that again. I have to have my cursor in. So let's take a look at pH. And what this shows you is pH on the y-axis and survey miles on the x-axis. So if you hover on the yellow line, you can watch the red icon, the red arrow here, and you can see that it's going to show you where you're at on the survey track and take you to those different spots. So if you were to, let me look at it one more time here. If you were to follow pH and find out where some of these anomalies are, where you see spikes in the pH, and go to those locations by clicking on the yellow line. You can see that, here's a spike in pH, and it may or not be related to the paper mill at the mouth of the Puyallup River. So it's an easy way to kind of assess water quality conditions really quickly. You're not going to want to use this for any kind of legal action or anything like that. It's just more of a kind of a way to get a baseline feel for an area where you might want to go to and explore further. So another thing that you can do with this tool is you can locate animals. So what I did is counted animals that I saw along the way and geolocated them. So we have these mapping layers. We're partners with Esri, so we're able to utilize, this is an Esri ArcGIS online map, and you can click also on these blue lines and go to different locations that interest you. In this case, I want to see where these seals were. I remember seeing a bunch of seals around here. And so these yellow dots, when I click on the layers on the map, pop up, and you can see where seals were. And you can zoom in on that area. Click on the blue line, and it'll take you to all these buddies here hanging out. And so if you click on the data point, I think there's a count of those. So yeah, here's the count. So I saw 16 harbor seals at that location. Another layer that I had on here was seal mortalities. I saw a few different seal mortalities along the trip too. So here's a spot where there was a seal mortality, and you can go to that location, and there's the poor guy, didn't make it. Another really incredible thing that I found from this that other people are using is being able to track habitat restoration. So this is this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge, but in my opinion, it's a landscape scale restoration project that happened recently, well, within the last 10 years, and it's what we need around Puget Sound more if the opportunities arise, because it covers such a wide area, restoring this whole delta that was once levied off for grazing cattle. The levees were removed in cooperation with the Nisqually tribe, and it allowed these inlets to come alive again. And you can, so I got permission to go in here with my kayak during the right tide, and you can actually get into these little fingers. It's not easy to do, and you have to be real. First of all, you have to have permission. I would never recommend anyone to bring a kayak in here. The tidal exchange is quick. It's really flat, and even when the tide comes all the way in, it covers this mud flat area just a couple feet, but or less in some cases. But you can't differentiate between the channel and the water area anymore, so you can get high and dry stuck on the mud flat in your kayak, and then you can't get out because when you step out you go knee deep or deeper in muck. So you got to come in when these channels are available, and get out quickly before they go away or before the rest of the water comes in. So here we can see these trees were deciduous trees that were there when the levees were up, but since the saltwater intrusion has come, they've died out and they've left these skeletons behind. It's fascinating to see them. I thought I had no expectation of that. The amount, it wasn't really captured in the imagery, but if you've ever had a chance to walk the boardwalk there or go there, the amount of birds and eagles and marine mammals and herons, the place is alive, and it's a special place, and you can visit it here on EarthViews if you want, or go there. But what I like most about it is how important it is in terms of creating this estuary for rearing Chinook. So Chinook come out of the Nisqually River as juveniles, and before they just had to head out. They headed out heading north, heading out towards the ocean. Now they have this whole area to feed and grow in and get bigger to help to avoid predators. So it's really important. Really, really cool. And one of the places that they get to go to as they let me do this. Let's check out these kelp forests. So sorry, I'm moving around here, but if you go to the Explore Puget Sound here, you can get taken straight to a kelp forest under the Narrows Bridge. And this is what those juvenile Chinook are dependent upon, and what used to be running all along the shorelines of Puget Sound and out in the middle channels were these giant kelp forests. that give habitat for small juvenile fish to hide in, but they also are great carbon sinks, um, and really important for the overall health of Puget Sound. You can see them going all the way up here. But other, what's limiting the kelp forests and other life is these armored shorelines. They're they're a really big problem in Puget Sound. They're disrupting the land-water interface. They're disrupting the amount of sediment that can come into the water so that you can have eelgrass and kelps, the nutrients that it takes, the different woody debris that would be coming into the water is all disrupted because of this bank arming. And it's done by the railroad here. It's done by residential areas, private and commercial land. And one thing I thought was really interesting was when you just take, all the different animals I saw, cormorants, mergansers, osprey, porpoises, and you just start clicking on them to bring all the different layers up of all these different animals I saw, you can see here, right, is this big gap. And it wasn't like I was being lazy, you know, um, it's just a spot where there was no activity for wildlife. And when you go there and you click on it, you can see it's this whole area through here is part of the railroad. So this is the railroad up here on this plateau, and it's the bank arming of the railroad, and trains are going by regularly. And I think it's my theory anyway. It's potentially disruptive, to decent habitat for wildlife there. So I got one more spot I want to take you to, and then I'll pause for questions. But hopefully I can get there. Where is it? This is a beautiful area near Olympia, if you're ever around there. But this is a place, it's called Fisherman's Cove. And it's another thing that we can do, right? I've spent a lot of time talking about some of the habitat issues and some of the water quality issues and some of the problems with Puget Sound. But Puget Sound is still an incredibly beautiful place. And one of the things you can do here is just experience its beauty. And you'll never get this from a topographic map, from a native perspective, where you can actually get into these little inlets. Let's see if I can back up here and show you this moss covered log. Yeah, there we go. So this was, believe it or not, a fish did jump out of the water right here in front of my kayak. I was just kind of zooming in right up here, and you can see all the little growths on the tree. I mean, it's just a great example of how special the Pacific Northwest is. Um, so yeah, I'll stop there.
Super cool, Brian. Just, man, it's just great. So valuable work. And then you've got so much data. I mean, it's incredible to have all that in one place. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
I
And I
really
think,
appreciate how many levels you're looking at. I mean, how many different points of data that you're collecting. It's pretty well-rounded scientific array.
yeah, with my background, I wanted to create something that was useful to my colleagues, right? I wasn't just, it could have been easy just to be like, okay, just Street View, no extra data. But we had a saying early on, is like, while you're out there, throw this on the boat. What other instruments do you have? And when we work with people too, when we talk to stakeholders and we go to the waterways that they're interested in having documented, it's one of the first questions is what data. The imagery is easy, right? We're going to be out there. What other information do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got several questions. One, do you ever get any volunteers like the citizen science thing? Like, do you guys ever do anything with that?
Yeah, let me show you. We've had a few, and in particular, Rod, Puget Sound Mapper Rod went crazy. And he is responsible for Heron Island, McNeil Island, because these were places I was having trouble getting to. Um, but he's gun ho, and he took his, I forget what they call it, skull. He like, where is he? There he is. So he's got one of these kind of boats, and
Oh,
he's
wow.
and he just gets out there. So yeah, anyone can grab a camera and throw it on their boat. He doesn't take water quality information, and sometimes he doesn't get as close to the shore as we're interested in, but it's still, really valuable information. Yeah, I mean, this is a great job here, right? So yeah, he did these islands. He did McNeil Island. Um, cool stuff.
Yeah. And like Washington Kayak Club, do you do anything with them? I'm sure they would love to see this. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm connected with the kayak clubs, all of them through Facebook and such. And I've gotten a lot of people early on who were ready and gung ho. I wasn't, because I was trying to differentiate between overlapping information and the granularity of the information I wanted. Like I said, Rod doesn't have any water quality data. I can't give a water quality meter to everyone. Not everyone's going to calibrate it properly before they go in the field. So there's those kind of things to consider. So at first I was very interested in I was kind of being hoggish, right? I'll do it, and I'm going to do it a certain way, and we're going to be consistent about that. Um, and and given whatever it is what you're trying to accomplish, that may be important if you really want those types of other waterway data. But from a scale, when you're talking about scaling, and getting lots of data in lots of places, that's really important. Here's uh 800 miles of rivers in Georgia done by the Georgia River Network, all crowdsourced. So these are just people who put their cameras on kayaks and went out and mapped it. And they send us the data. Well, they send EarthViews the data now, not EarthViews Conservation Society. They send EarthViews the data, and they host it and process it and publish it.
that's great. And then that can be used by local municipalities or other groups and such. Yeah. That's awesome. I was also curious, you've done a bunch of work in the Great Salt Lake, and I was kind of following that, and there were all these concerns about, but then they had this epic snow year, right, in the Wasatch Mountains, and supposedly, last I heard, it's really helped save that ecosystem. I was kind of wondering what your insight now, not so much.
So unfortunate that even folks like you, I mean, I'm not being critical, but I'm being critical of the press. And you know, the Great Salt Lake hitting a record low. Let's see. This isn't the spot I wanted to show you. When I say record low, you're going to get a feel for it here. Sorry. There we go. So 1,280 feet. I can't remember. Do we have the elevation here? No. Anyway, last year at this time when I was out there, it hit a record low. Right, at this time when I was out mapping. And this is in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. This was 7-day expedition, you know, all my food and water with me, sleeping on the beach or the Neo shore. Just, really just an outrageous experience. But I'm not trying to glorify it. It's work. So this is 15 years in the making. Okay, this is not something that one great snowpack year and a couple conservation measures by the state is going to fix. Um, what's going to happen is it's gone up 4 feet now since this picture. And by the way, you can see I'm dragging the kayak here. This is about 3 inches of water. And as far as you can see, if you look at this map, that white area is where the water used to be. I think, yeah, see, Google still has, I mean, Esri still has it mapped. So this is where the water used to be. This is my survey track where the water is now. Actually, it goes further in this picture for about another 1.5 miles, but it's only 3 inches deep. It's just because the topography is so flat, it's a fascinating place. But no, the one snowpack is not going to, so it's going to draw over the summer through evaporation and water use 3 feet at least. Probably is going to be a wash this year. And that goes for Lake Powell and Lake Mead as well. They're going up, you know, I think Lake Powell was at 24% of reservoir capacity, which is just alarming. I mean, if you're a water manager, you're freaking out, beyond freaking out. I think it's risen to about 34% with the melt, but they're going to utilize that and it'll be back down probably by the end of the summer.
I was also, so Janice does a lot of work on the Columbia. And so I was wondering if you've done any work on the Columbia or thought about doing work on the Columbia.
Yes, I've thought about it, and we have done some work on the Willamette as it goes into the Columbia. So we were working with a company called Gravity Marine during this, and we were working to assess what the bathymetry was and water quality for some of these Superfund sites in the area. This was back a few years ago. So, but what we were able to do is create this map of the bathymetry in the area. And so you can go to bluer areas are deeper. So you can go to some of these hot spots, these deeper spots, for instance, and look and see what's causing them.
So you were measuring bathymetry from the kayak?
This was on a boat.
Oh, okay, got it. Were you using like side scan sonar or something?
Yeah,
or?
it was side scan sonar.
Yeah, because I was wondering from a kayak that'd be kind of. I don't know how big those units are these days.
This was a pretty big one.
Yeah.
It had to be steady. It was we were on a 30-foot research vessel.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, Janice, your work with the River Mile, do you see a lot of overlap here with the work that Brian's doing? Oh, you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Now you can hear me.
Yeah.
I was muted somewhere else. Yeah, this is definitely stuff that that overlaps what we're doing, but complements might be even a better term. I mean, we have crayfish data in a variety of locations throughout the country, actually, and this type of shoreline information would be wonderful to have, you know, as an added data layer. You know, why are we finding the crayfish where we are finding them? Or not finding them?
Right. You know, I guess another place people are interested in is we went down. So after the Chicago River, after we got the gear working as good as we possibly could, we went down the Elwha River 48 hours after the last dam came down to create baseline conditions there. So you can tour the whole Elwha River from 7 years ago, right after the last dams came down. And, you know, what we were able to do was, so you can search tags, right? Yeah, so you can type in a Chinook and submit and see this time where we caught. So we did, you know, some places we take underwater imagery as well.
Yeah.
And so here's a case where here's the underwater camera. Here's one of the first Chinook to make it above the dam, spawning in the Elwha River, and captured by our snorkel view, we call it. And then here's the picture that the camera took of the Chinook swimming by. And you can see Chinook spawning here. And you can go out to the delta, and the delta was just starting to form. So you can get a feel for some of the sediment that was just starting to be deposited on the delta.
So cool. Were you in a whitewater kayak or were you in another one of those sit on top fishing kayaks?
I was in a raft, a whitewater raft,
Oh yeah.
air raft. And it's cool. You can see these areas where this is where the lake was, right? So the lake, the water level was up here. And you started to see all the tree stumps that were left behind, logged before the dams were put up, are being revealed again. Fascinating stuff. And we haven't gone back, but we're hopefully going to go back this summer. So this will be a whole new track through here with a lot more different information.
Janice has her hand up.
Yeah, are your data layers available?
Only in as much as you can go to, our website and click on the this map right here.
I was thinking that the stuff on the Columbia River, any that you have, would be a nice data layer. Well, actually, depending on where my groups are collecting crayfish data, that it might be nice to utilize the data layers you have along with what crayfish are we finding and where and when, based on, looking at where is the shoreline and how does it change. Up here, Lake Roosevelt, we started looking at crayfish in the reservoir, and it's really unknown to scientists what the effect of the reservoir fluctuating, what that has on crayfish. And so that's another cool thing that would be nice to be able to do something like this, really do the shoreline and have somebody looking at the crayfish and what's where.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those opportunities for you or the folks you're working with to grab a camera and go out and collect the data, and send it to, not EarthViews Conservation Society. I want to continue to make this distinction, but send it to EarthViews, Courtney, and she would put it on this atlas, right? And then you would have it. In terms of, we have to, there's a special sauce that goes behind putting these tours, if you will, together to have this kind of navigable, immersive experience. Some programming that goes behind that. So we don't have, like they would call it, an API in the software business where you could just grab a blue line, grab some code or something that represented the blue line and stick it on your map and be able to access it on your map. And so
is it ArcGIS? Is it a story map?
it is ArcGIS. It's not a story map, but we use
One of the others.
Use ArcGIS Online. And we do have an application that allows people to interface their data with our layers on their ArcGIS Online maps if they sign into ArcGIS Online.
Okay, yeah.
But it's not something we use regularly.
Right. I have our crayfish data. Well, normally I have our crayfish data in 3 different formats. One would be a story map. The other would be a map of the data as it's being entered. And then I grab the data and do a little cleanup and then just have the data files available on our website.
Right.
I want people to be able to do some comparing, and utilize the data alongside other things like this.
Right. But I mean, so unless you have crayfish data for this section of the Willamette,
Yeah.
we don't have anything in the Columbia.
Right.
That's why I was saying if you got yourself a camera and went out.
Right.
And
And actually, that's a good thing that when the people go out and collect their data, we have it from, like I said, all over the continent, and something that they could do. We're finding a lot of our people who collect crayfish are also helping out other projects. You know, when they're out there, they're doing things for 2 or 3 different projects. You're going out, why not?
exactly.
That's great.
Did you map Spirit Lake right by St. Helens? Is that Spirit Lake that's right there?
No, we didn't. That's actually me just for fun. I did a climb.
You hiked St. Helens, nice.
Yeah. I put the camera on a backpack.
Oh yeah.
You can experience
Yeah.
going up Mount St. Helens. It was kind of brutal, to be honest. You get in this stuff that just slips out from under your feet with every step, and it's at about a 60-degree pitch. It's a beautiful day though. Yeah, you can see how steep that.
Yeah, climbing Mount St. Helens is 1 step up, 3 steps back.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been into the crater when I was an intern at St. Helens.
Yeah.
Never wanted to do the backside like that. That's so steep, and it's an arduous trek.
It was.
When did you do it?
A couple of years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was there in 87. Haven't been back for a while.
It was still warm back then.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. It's still warm now. I mean, it's still pretty active.
Yeah, I haven't followed it much anymore. We followed the hot water stream into the crater to the lava dome.
Right.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It was arduous. I more power to y'all who can do those. I couldn't do it today. That wouldn't even be an option.
It was.
Look at the steam coming off of it.
Yeah, you can see it. I didn't even bother leveling these. I just threw it up here for fun. So that's
cool.
Great view of the crater.
You could hear it calving
Yeah.
It was just constant calving coming off these cliffs. I was even like, should I be standing here, man? This is like it's gonna go.
It's a pretty dangerous place.
There's Mount Adams. I'd intended to climb Mount Adams, but the forest fires there over the last 5 to 7 years or decade has really made that kind of look like Gollum from like the Lord of the Rings.
Mount Doom.
Yes. Oh, it was horrible. I got the worst vibes there. I just said I'm not going up that. It's not meant to be.
I love those views though. It's incredible. I've been up St. Helens a few times, and it's amazing to be able to look out the volcanoes like that.
Yeah.
And to see Puget Sounds. It's awesome. It's great. Very cool. Nice. Well, thank you, Brian. This was wonderful. I wish we had more folks for you. But we'll put it on the webpage. We'll send you the link, and you'll have that. We'll get it out there. And here I'm going to stop recording.